We also would like to thank Dr. Ali Kubba from UK for honoring our respectful scientific gathering with his valuable attendance and participation.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair, and I'm delighted to be here in Cairo. This is, I think, my 5th visit. And I'm really delighted to be in a conference which has for tomorrow Better Women's Health, because I think, though my talk is on contraception, in a meeting which is themed on fertility, I think giving women the choice to decide when to start their families and how to control their families is a very important thing. And the fact that it is also done in collaboration with the Evidence-Based Women's Health Society is very important, because the evidence is what we go on. This is my open slide. I work at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital, which is part of King's College, London. And you can see the two images. St Thomas's Hospital is just opposite Big Ben, and Guy's Hospital is just under the Shard, which is now the tallest building in Europe. It's built with Arab money, so we can at least be comfortable with that. This is my disclosure, which is that I do advisory work for pharmaceutical companies. So I'm going to start by talking about contraception, oral contraception, and introduce this concept of the 24/4 regimen. It's a concept which I think is new for Egypt, but the 24/4 regimen is now available technically in most of the rest of the Arab world, and globally it is making inroads into the practice of contraception. So we look at some of the evidence, we look at the benefits of the 24/4 regimen, the effectiveness, for instance, bleeding profile, the fact that it may have additional gynecological benefits, and the fact that it is safe because it's a low-dose regimen. But I start with a bit of history. A lot of people feel that, as you know, we, the Arabs, claim that we were first in civilization in all kinds of ways. And in London, where I work with my Egyptian colleagues, I tend to say I come from Iraq. I tend to say civilization started in Iraq. They say this is rubbish. Civilization started in Egypt. And this slide, number one, is it shows you the acacia plant, and there is a view that the concept of contraception started, as a matter of fact, in ancient Egypt, with the pessaries made of acacia, cotton, dates, and honey. Acacia is spermicidal, so if you can make a pessary of these compounds and put it in the vagina, it will act as a contraceptive, like a barrier, and as a spermicide. But the modern contraception, the modern pill, started really with two ladies. So you can see the woman at the sort of near number 4 is Margaret Sanger, and she was a women's rights campaigner. And the woman on the extreme side is Catherine McCormick. Catherine McCormick was a very rich businesswoman. Her mother died when she was having her 11th child. So she was determined that people should be able to control their fertility. And what she did is she gave a lot of money to the research, and then Margaret Sanger started the Planned Parenthood movement and the Planned Parenthood clinics in the US. And if you look at the history of the pill, the two gentlemen on this slide are essentially the godfathers of the pill. So John Rock was a gynecologist, but he was doing research in the 50s on the use of progestogens as contraceptives. And George Pincus is supposed to be the godfather of the pill. He was the researcher who was working on developing a hormonal contraceptive. And I say here that these pioneers were clever scientists because they were doing the work when everybody else didn't really think of it. But they were also clever politicians, because George Pincus was a Catholic. And he thought, if I could get a pill, which people use all the time, and therefore they probably will not have periods, everybody will say this is abnormal, this is not natural. He was hopeful that at that time, the Catholic Church will actually endorse the pill. So he thought, what I do is I will give women a 7-day break so they can have their periods. So the Pope in Rome will say, well, this is okay. This fits in with the natural cycle. So the 21/7 concept actually started more as a political trick. It was merely to allow the pill to go on the market without the politicians having worries about it. And you can see that this is Time magazine in the 60s. There started to be some anxieties about the pill, and especially about how you take it. And the picture on the right of this slide shows you the first everyday pill. And if you look at oral contraception in the world, you'll see that in the US and Canada and South Africa and Australia, the normal way people take the pill is they take it all the time. And this was the first product in the mid-60s which allowed people to take the pill on a daily basis, with having, in the hormone-free time, some hormone-free days. And of course, the thing that has happened since the 1960s, when the pill was introduced, is the hormone level in modern pills has come down. And now, most of the pills which will come to the market will have 20 micrograms rather than 30 micrograms. The view is that the 20 microgram preparation is as effective as the 30 microgram preparation, and for the woman, if you can use this much of hormone rather than this much of hormone and give her the same protection, then you are doing well. So, for the 24/4 regimen, the YAS, these are the features. It's a 20 microgram pill. It has drospirenone, the same progestogen that is in Yasmin, at the same dose. It has 24 active pills and 4 inactive pills, but it's an everyday version. And the view is that the woman then, as she follows the colors of the pills and follows the arrows, cannot go wrong. And if you're using an extended regimen with the additional 3 days of hormones, you're also less likely, if the woman forgets, for instance, she's less likely to get problems with the bleeding, and she's less likely to have problems with failure of the method. And as you know, this product is licensed in the US for premenstrual syndrome and is licensed in a number of countries, including the UK, for the management of moderate grade acne. So this is the way the pill packet looks. And I've just described to you the way the woman takes it. So there are 24 active pills and 4 inactive pills. And it is important to be aware of that. This has advantages which I'm going to show you. But one of the important points that you want to make is that normally, and I'm going to use the pointer, I don't know whether it works this far, I don't think it works this far. Normally, if you have a 21-day packet, you will expect to have your period, your menstruation, in the 7-day break. Obviously, if you have just 4 days break, the woman may have her period when she starts the next packet, and you need to tell her that, because otherwise she will get worried about it. One of the big advantages about 24/4 is the fact that the half-life of drospirenone is long, and therefore, even in the 4 days, you will still have a tiny bit of hormone to bridge that gap. And that, as I say, has a number of advantages. One, which is obvious to you, is that the efficacy of that product, the 24/4 regimen, would be quite high, because the hormone is in the system for a longer period of time, and the gap is much smaller. Because as you know, women who fall pregnant on the pill or have problems with bleeding on the pill tend to forget when to start the next packet. With the everyday version, there is no problem with that. So this is technically the rationale for the 24/4 regimen. It gives you a lower dose of estrogen, and because of the way it is used, it gives you the same protection that a 30 microgram pill, a 21/7 type pill would give you. Escape ovulation is less likely, and the more important benefit is the one at the bottom, which is if you talk to women who used 21/7, they'll come and say, well, I'm all right, but my periods are still a bit on the heavy side, maybe they're still painful, I get headaches during the 7-day break, I feel a bit of tension during the 7-day break, and of course if you bridge that gap, you reduce what we call the hormone withdrawal symptoms. People tend to get migraine headaches during the week of the pill because of the drop in the estrogen level. And here you're just maintaining it long enough for these symptoms not to happen. It will also give the woman lighter and easier periods, reduces the pain that tends to be associated with the period. So there are advantages on efficacy, there are advantages on what we call gynecological benefits, which is to reduce the problems that tend to happen with the 21/7 routine. So if you look at efficacy, as you know, we now tend to think about what we call the real life efficacy. We're talking about evidence. So when you say the pill works in more than 99% of cases, well, you're talking about ideal use. But in the real life, where women may miss pills, the typical use failure is higher, and it's highlighted in this slide. So what we need to do in this modern 21st century is to produce products, new regimen, new formulations of the combined pill that will reduce the chances of failure in real life. And that is where 24/4 comes. So if you look at many of the pills that will be coming to the market, there are a number of them, apart from this regimen available worldwide, they are all either on a 24/4 regimen, or slightly even longer, or continuous. So there is a pill coming to the UK from the States called Seasonique, where the woman uses she uses 84 pills back to back without a break, just to maintain the efficacy. And we think that since this is also an everyday version, the woman takes a pill every day, she doesn't need to remember to start a new packet because she's always going to be looking at the next pill. And we have evidence about the 24/4 regimen. We have evidence from what is called the active surveillance studies. So INAS, or C, is the International Active Surveillance Study. And these are studies that are done worldwide, and they essentially are looking at women who are using these products in real life. And therefore you can see that the database is pretty good. Over 85,000 users, over technically about 250,000 women's years of exposure. These studies all carry on for 5 years, and they produce data on efficacy and on safety and on other matters in a sort of continuous way. So this is the data on NIAS, on the 24/4. And what I wanted to highlight to you is that if you compare it to the 21/7 regimen, all other pills, if you compare it to Yasmin, I'm going to see if I can use the arrow here. Yeah, so you've got Yasmin, you've got the normal 21/7, and as you know, in the States, for instance, there is also the 20 microgram low estrogen, which is 24/4, and that's been going on for a long time. And you can see this is the failure in the 21/7, this is the failure of Yasmin, which is 21/7, and the 24/4 seems to have lower failure, seems to do better than these other products. And we think this is because of the fact that drospirenone is a potent progestogen, you have a 24/4 regimen, you have an everyday packaging of the pill, and you have the gynecological benefits. Women like it because they're less likely to feel not very well during their menstruation, and therefore they tend to stick to it and carry on using it. But the other interesting aspect of it is, in this big data set, obviously you can look at ages. So there was a study of teenagers, women under the age of 18 using these pills. And of course the problem definitely in Europe and the US is that if you give the pill to an 18-year-old and compare it to the pill in a 30-year-old, the 18-year-old does much less well because they tend to have busy lives, they forget pills, and therefore we would expect the pill in a teenager to do worse. But actually with Yaz, it does better. The failure rate is much lower than if you compare it to 21-7 regimen. So we think that for women who are at risk of missing pills, women who are at risk of not using the pill properly, this combination tends to do better. It is for the woman who probably needs something that she does every day. The other aspect is, as I said, the menstruation-related symptoms, because these affect the quality of life of women, and this is my slide on premenstrual tension. And you can see in this slide that if you compare the way women feel during their pill-taking days compared to the time when they have the 7-day break. So the brown columns are during the 21 days, the yellow columns are in the 7-day break. They get many more symptoms during the 7-day break. Pelvic pain, breast pain, headaches, and the use of pain medication. So we know that as a matter of fact, if you can bridge that hormone-free interval in a small way, just to keep the hormones going, you may do better in helping women with these hormone withdrawals. The next point is the bleeding profile with these pills. So we have a number of studies that look at the bleeding profile, including the active surveillance studies. And the point about it is that the majority of women will get either normal or light bleeding. Tend to have shorter bleeding episodes, which is quite good because then they are less likely to have interference with their lives. And if you look at the WHO 90 reference period, then they usually get the average episodes that you'd expect in a 90-day period. And it is very well accepted. The last point is an important point, because if you look at the discontinuation of the sort of standard pills in women, a lot of discontinuation happens because of irregular bleeding. With Yaz, with the 24/4, the discontinuation rate due to the pill is actually much smaller. It's under 1%. This is a slide comparing Yaz to Mercilon, which is a 20 microgram desogestrel pill, and you can see, I don't want to spend too long on the slide, you can see on the Yaz side that the heavy bleeding is much less likely to happen, that you are more likely to get either normal or light bleeding. And you need to just inform the woman about this, because some women may think, my period is changing, it's not as heavy or as long as it used to be. That's a good thing, as a matter of fact, the fact that it is light and the fact that it is shorter. So if you think, well, this is a new pill being introduced in Egypt, as a matter of fact, it's been around for a long time, it's a very popular pill. The world literature now is probably over 10 million. So this was 2011 when we had nearly 8 million women years of use, and the satisfaction is high in most of the studies. So if you look at studies in South America and Eastern Europe, Western Europe, in the US, the acceptability, tolerability, and continuation seems to be higher. So we have a product which we think is a product for the 21st century, a product that we need to think about when we are counseling women about taking the pill, because it gives them a number of additional advantages. And of course, as you know, this is again comparing desogestrel to drospirenol, although this is a study on Yasmin, you can see that the weight gain is less likely. And the important thing is this weight gain in the early cycles. You know, women will go on the pill, will come back to you as their gynecologist and say, don't like it, I've put on weight. The point about it is, with the rosperidone pills, the weight gain is minimal in the early months, so it gives women the confidence in using that pill. And as I say, there are a number of other indications. I'm not going to spend too much time on them because of the time limitation, but acne, premenstrual syndrome, problems with hormone withdrawal syndrome. So, what is the conclusion? Well, we have a new product which has a lower dose of estrogen, but it is devised on the 24/4 regimen, which maintains its efficacy, its tolerability, its acceptability, and gives you very good cycle control as well as very good contraceptive effects. It compares well with other low-dose pills. It has a high user satisfaction. If you look at the benefits, again, the gynecological advantages, they seem to be very favorable for the woman, and the safety profile also seems to be good. And if we think, you know, what do women want? They want a method that works, and a 24/4 gives them higher efficacy. They want a method that is safe. A low-dose estrogen method has to be, on a safety scale, better than a higher dose. They want a method that they like and will continue to use, and of course, a method with gynecological therapeutic indications is good. And they want added value. They want something that helps them to continue to take the pill without needing to think too much about it. So I think it is a product that satisfies the agenda that a woman has. I want something effective, something safe, something I like, and something that I can use easily. And it is interesting that sometimes when you have couples coming to your surgery, as I have in London, the men tend to also support this. Why? Because it takes the symptoms around menstruation away from the woman, then she is much more likely to have more time for her husband, to have more time for her family. She gets less bleeding, less premenstrual tension, better skin, less water retention, and the many other non-contraceptive benefits of the pill. So I think it's a pill for the what we call the modern age, and it fits in with tomorrow better women's health, because healthy women keeps healthy children, keeps healthy societies, and it should fit in within the full range of contraception. It makes efficacy a primary aim. It adds some therapeutic benefits. You need to obviously argue it and counsel the woman and teach her how to use it. You need to support them when they get problems. Remember, people on the pill will have some breakthrough bleeding in the early cycle. And obviously, research is continuing, and I'm sure we will be looking at improvement on all these methods as time progresses. Thank you very much.